Okay, so today is Thursday, March 22nd. You know what that is? This is the release day for the new film Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I haven't seen the film yet, but I do have some things to say about Ghostbusters. So let's talk about it. Okay, so I'm going to be honest here. Some of you know I am a pretty big fan of Ghostbusters. I've loved Ghostbusters since I was a kid. I've been a fan of the cartoon series, the original real Ghostbusters show. I played some of the video games, and I've got Ghostbusters t-shirts, pop figures. I've been a fan since I was a kid. So I, for one, oddly, am not excited about Frozen Empire. I'm probably the only person, and I'm going to get into that, why that is. So, and to this day, I haven't seen Afterlife. I know what you're thinking. I think I know what you're thinking. And which is, how can you be a fan and not have seen Afterlife? It was a good movie. So I hear it's pretty decent. Frozen Empire feels like it's going to be, enjoyable. I'm not looking forward to it. Yeah, I suppose I'll watch it one day, probably. But it's been a couple years since Afterlife came out, and I can't bring myself to watch it. And primarily, I think that's because no Harold Ramis. Yeah, I know he probably makes. I know they pay honor, or they pay homage to Egon in Afterlife in a meaningful way. And I don't know, I guess, if I'm being honest, I think I'm bothered. I guess I'm a little bit angry still that there wasn't a third movie sooner with the original gang. And angry is probably too strong a word. I'm irritated by that. But what helps a little bit, though, and I just got through this recently, so I can talk about this now. But so I recently played through the Ghostbusters video game from 2009. Some of you might know that game, and if you don't, and you haven't played that game, or you haven't just watched it on YouTube, it's an amazing game. Not just as a video game, but to me. And I don't care what anybody says about canon and whether it is or isn't canon. I'm going by Dan Aykroyd. Ghostbusters is his sort of brainchild, but you don't really have true Ghostbusters, in my opinion, without Harold Ramis. Sure, you got the concept, and you have a lot of the ins and outs of how the tools work and what the world is like. But a lot of the comedy and sensibilities on the page also comes from Harold Ramis, who's written some masterpiece comedies. Caddyshack. No. Anyway, you know his pedigree. Look it up. The point I'm making is that Ghostbusters, the video game, is the third movie to me. Dan Aykroyd said it. I'm with him. After playing through the game, it's not even about the game. Like, the writing of the game is so pitch perfect. It's just like they made another movie. You had Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd writing the script to this game, and it shows at the granular level some of the most nuanced humor is in the game as it's just like if you were just listening to it straight audio, if you look at the movies, the first two movies, and just listen to the audio only, listen to the dialogue, listen to the rhythm that's there, the game is the exact same. They didn't miss a step. After having been out of it for however many years since the second movie, it's right in step. There are some things that are sort of off about it that, like, they're minor in comparison to like the feel of Ghostbusters. Like, as far as I'm concerned, as a fan, that's what you want. You want it to feel like the first two movies felt, good or bad, for better or worse. It's Ghostbusters. Now, I want to do a separate conversation about the game, but I'll say this here, that my only issues with the story of the game had nothing to do with the writing of the game. You see what I mean? My problems were I don't know what you want to call it, where they were maybe plot things. No, they're not even plot things. They did, because they don't really have any direct bearing on the story per se. They're just like sort of little, they're ingredients that don't make or break the greatness of the game. And I'll probably say this again, but I can say it here now anyway. My problem with the game really comes from no Dana Barrett, right? No Sigourney Weaver, and the fact that Winston has a doctorate degree, which is great, but how it comes about is off. It's just sort of casually thrown in there. I didn't really care for that too much, but cool. At least make it feel a little bit more believable in terms of time. The game takes place 2 years after the events of Ghostbusters 2. And unless you're in a fast track program, which I don't know how, I'm sure they had a couple of those back in the late 80s, early 90s, but I have a friend who finished her doctorate in 3 years. It was a special program. So I'm willing to concede that perhaps that's what Winston got his doctorate. He did a program like that. That's why it was so quick. 2 years is no, if anybody knows anything about what it is to get a PhD, it doesn't take 2 years. But cool. I'm willing to let it go. I'm willing to let it. And the Dana Barrett thing feels like the fact that she's not in the game is one thing, but they bring up this new love interest for Venkman, which is a problem given the history established between Venkman and Dana Barrett over the course of those two movies. Feels like, and she's mentioned in the game. It's just weird. So that's weird. I would just assume you just don't have a love interest, period, or just have him be like a dude who's like he hits on a lot of girls, whatever, like normal. Don't even bring a love interest per se in it. Like, it's I don't. That aside, it's an amazing game. I love the game. But not only is the writing strong, it makes you feel like a Ghostbuster. Just mechanically, that's part of another conversation I'm going to have. But I just feel like it makes you feel like a Ghostbuster, and you feel like you're in an actual Ghostbusters story with the original crew, who lent their likenesses and their voice and their essence to this project. That is cool to me. And the fact that we never got that I'm cool, fine. I'm cool with the game. I'm fine that we have the game in lieu of a third film on the big screen, because that occupies that space for me. However, my problem with new movies featuring the original cast without Harold Ramis is the fact that Harold Ramis is not in the mix. And you can continue to do Ghostbuster stories and have a couple of the original people sort of make appearances and have a new team take it over. I'd much rather not see it's hard to see the original cast in the mix without Egon. So that's sort of where I'm living right now with regards to the Ghostbusters conversation, and why Afterlife and by extension Frozen Empire is hard for me as a fan. And so I haven't really been super excited to see either of the movies. Don't think I've ever even watched a trailer, like a proper trailer for either movie. I've seen pieces of them, but I've intentionally kept away from the marketing from of the Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters movies. Because part of me is like, dang, man, why did it take so long, man? You guys took so long to make the... Look, I know sometimes it takes a long time to make movies. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. A lot of people are in the mix. You can't just write a script and then get a camera and shoot it. I feel like it should be that simple, though. If you're the people who are making the Ghostbusters movies and you want to make the movie, just make the movie. You're waiting for locations, probably. You got to wait for cast. There's a lot of things in the mix that make it challenging to make a movie quickly, especially if you're making it on the scale of these Ghostbusters movies and a lot of movies that are coming out of studios like Columbia, Sony, Columbia, these Universal and them. It takes a long time, and I guess that's my feeling, and I feel like I wanted to talk about it today because, for all intents and purposes, it is a Ghostbusters day because the new movie drops today. And it just felt like something to get into a little bit. Yeah, that's where I'm living. I've seen some of the interviews, a little bit of them. It's nice to see Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray and Ernie Hudson on the press tour doing the promotions. It's just good to see them. And I'm glad the Ghostbusters is sort of still in the consciousness, such a good property. It's just such a good, I love that property so much. And it just doesn't feel the same without Harold Ramis. And that's fine. It's not supposed to feel the same. I recognize that. It's not supposed to feel the same. And there's some degree of familiarity there. At some point, for me, I think I will probably watch them. I've seen the 2016 Ghostbusters, which was not as terrible as people. I think people had a really hard time with the fact that it was just not everybody, but a lot of people had a problem with it. It was just these four women, so a remake of the original Ghostbusters, but with women, which. If you're a Ghostbusters fan, I was curious, so I was like, I'm gonna watch it anyway. But I understand what the problems were. I don't think the movie is as good as the original movie. It had nothing to do with the fact that these were all women Ghostbusters. What was cool about it, the original cast members made an appearance, right, in different ways, and that was cool too. I liked that. That feels like if you're gonna bring the original cast in the mix. Obviously, Harold Ramis has passed away. They found a cool way to bring him in. I think doing something like that is great. You'd have like the Egon Spengler, scholarship fund or whatever it is that they, obviously that wasn't in that movie, but that you have something like that. You do something instead of having them in the mix. Just something about it just feels like, then you have them be a ghost, like whatever. Anyway, the point I'm making is that if I watched the 2016 version, but again, the focus was not on the original cast. It was on a new group of people who were going to do a new thing in this alternate universe of stuff or whatever. This other version of Ghostbusters, which is cool. Do that. I don't know if I have too much else to say about it. I just think that I guess I'm still hurting. I'm still feeling something that Egon Spengler is not around. But I guess it's cool to have Spengler in the mix, Spengler's bloodline in the mix somehow. So he's still sort of in spirit part of the group. And that's comforting. It's just hard to do Ghostbusters without the quartet, the full situation. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. I was supposed to be continuing to update you on the CineQuest process, CineQuest projects, and that is still coming this week. As of yesterday, CineJoy, which is CineQuest's streaming arm, is now live for the next 9 days now, where people can, who maybe you missed a show during the in-person event, so you can now purchase a ticket to watch a film that you missed during the CineJoy period, which I may do. There are a couple of films that I wanted to see that I missed during the festival proper, and at some point I'll get myself together between now and the end of CineJoy to watch those movies. But I have enough to do with the ones with the reviews I'm going to be doing that will be posted very soon. So in the meantime, if you've watched this rant, thank you for taking the time to sit through this and just hear me vent a little bit about my feelings about Ghostbusters in general. And that'll be all for now. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching, and have a good weekend.